All right, so Robbie Figg here with the great man Justin Langer. Justin, they say don't meet your heroes, but I've met you a couple of times now, mate, and I have nothing but admiration for how you go about it, both from a family man point of view, a sporting athlete point of view, and a person that's so close to our heart in terms of mindfulness and mental health. It's a tough time at the moment, no doubt. Obviously, happy to say it's set up for that reason, but how are you going, mate? What's been happening in your world?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks, mate. I've loved the isolation, believe it or not, because uh, I do everything I haven't done in my adult life, and it sounds so silly, but I get to sleep at home every night. I get to see my kids every single day. I'm in a great routine. I can work from my office at home. I eat home cooked meals because
Yep.
the flip side of that is I usually have 10 months of the year where I'm away from home. I'm eating Uber Eats or room service or restaurant food. I'm in airplanes or in airports. And yeah, I'm actually loving the isolation. We're obviously going like most businesses, most sectors. Sport's no different. We're not immune to it. We're going through a really tough time at the moment. And navigating through that's quite stressful because it's affecting our people. And that's always hard. I find that hopefully with a person with great compassion, I find that really hard. So, but we're navigating through that. But I'm thankful that I've got incredible support. I've got a great perspective on life to get through these tough times.
And you say support. Who's your sort of number one? I guess I'm leading the witness a bit here by saying you're obviously home with your family, but are there other people around you that are sort of lifting you up as well? Because it's a tough job being at the top.
Yeah, it is. I often say leadership's really lonely position. I'm lucky, very lucky in my home life and my personal life. I've got incredible friends. I've got an amazing family. I'm sitting at my desk now. I've got a photo of my mum. I was going to show you, but then my beautiful mum who passed away a couple of years ago. And I think about it every day. And I actually just sent an email a little while ago. Someone was talking about our values of humility. And I said, it was a very nice email I received. And I said, well, if you and I can thank anyone for any humility, it's from my mum. She's an amazing person. But my family's, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to have that. And professionally, I've always felt that it's really important to have great mentors. And I've always been open to having great mentors. And from that point of view, like my family, like my personal, I'm so lucky. I've got people I can talk to all the time. I've been in a couple of coaching forums over the last 6 or 7 weeks. I found it really inspiring. And the reason I find it inspiring is I'm talking to people who walk in my shoes. And often you don't. Everyone's got an opinion on how we go about how leaders go about their business. But until they've walked in your shoes, they've got no idea. I remember the Prime Minister, last Christmas, there was bushfires ravaging Australia and everyone was pointing the finger at the Prime Minister for the bushfires. Like, oh my gosh. And I remember texting the Prime Minister and saying, look, for what it's worth, hang in there. No one walks in your shoes. I couldn't imagine being the Prime Minister. What a job that'd be. Oh my gosh. But I love people who have a crack at leadership. Not many people walk in their shoes. I wouldn't change it for anything, but yeah, it's a tough gig.
It's an unenviable position. And I think you mentioned ScoMo with the bushfires. And I was saying all through that, I wouldn't want to walk a mile in his shoes if you paid me. And I think that's purely because of the pressure that comes from the public and obviously with everything that's happening at the moment. I think he's doing an incredible job, and I'm sure you'd echo those sentiments.
I agree. And I love the fact that politics at the moment, they're actually how you'd love to see. There's so many things, there's so many silver linings that will hopefully come out of this isolation, this COVID period. But, they're not fighting each other. They're actually looking to help each other. And I've really enjoyed that. But there's a great poem, a Theodore Roosevelt poem, The Man in the Arena.
Yeah.
Again, it's brilliant for anyone who's watching this or listen to it. I certainly would recommend that. It's easy to find, and I think about that a lot. I might get it tattooed on my body somewhere. I don't know many words, but it's so true. I mean, there's so many critics out there, and it's easy to tear people down. It's easy to point your finger at someone. But until you've walked, you're the man in the arena, and sometimes it's really stressful. Being a leader, whether you're titled or untitled, can be really hard. But it's also one of the great things in life, because you're the man in the arena. You're the one who has to deal with it, not the people from the outside looking in, having an opinion. You're actually in the arena. I love that poem. So anyone who's watching this, do yourself a favour, read it. Read it not just once, read it 10 times, because, geez, it makes some sense.
I love that. Are you a diamond, Justin Langer? Are you someone that's formed under pressure?
Look, I look back on my life and I would say that the greatest lessons I've learned have been in my darkest times. And when you're going through it, it's horrible. There's a lot of talk about mental health, and when you're going through it, you can't see past the end of your nose.
Yeah.
And it's horrible time. I mean, times when you're dropped, or times when you're under pressure at work. But having looked back on those times, I'm so thankful for them, because they've certainly made me into the person I am now. And not just the people I've got around me, those mentors we talked about, they made me the person I am now, but also getting through tough times. I always believe you've got two choices. When things get hard, you've got two choices. You can either quit or you can get better. It's pretty much simple as that. Either quit or get better. And I always hope to think that I would take the second one of those, and always look to get better. As hard as it is at the time, you have courage, you have strength, but my gosh, they're really important. And as I said, those darkest times in my life, I would say, looking back, have been some of the best, because I've had to get better, and they've had layers to my personality and my character, no doubt about that.
Have they helped form the way you lead as well? So obviously letting and I guess alluding to the series The Test on Amazon, there's a lot of moments where you sort of look reflective, and I know that editing does a job, but is that how you operate? Do you let people learn their own lessons, especially the ones that are due to learn a lesson, if that makes sense?
Very much. And there's a couple of things about coaching. One, I'm thankful that I lived it as a player, because having lived 20 years of professional play, that's my life. And so there's not really much that any of our players will go through, whether it's making their debut, being dropped for the first time, having to retire, the scrutiny of the media, the scrutiny of the public. There's so many things that dealing with the tough times, dealing with the good times. Some people find it hard to deal with the rewards that come with it. So I'm really lucky that I've lived that life. So that gives me great empathy and compassion for my players. The other thing is, I'm really thankful I'm a parent. I've been a parent of 4 kids. That's really helped me be a coach as well, because you recognize,
I bet.
You've got to let your kids learn and make mistakes as well, same as you do with the players. So, and look, a really simple example is last week our contracts came out, and there's 5 or 6 guys who miss out on those, and I've got to sit down with them in the next couple of days and talk them through that. And having been in their shoes, I understand why they'll be frustrated. I understand why they'll be angry. I understand why they'll be disappointed. I've been there. So hopefully that allows me, with those experiences as a dad and experience in their shoes, that I could, at the very least, empathise for where they're at.
I think that puts you in great stead to deal with that sort of stuff, mate. And I saw that Uzi Khawaja came out in the week, and there's that frustration and that sort of, I guess, that moment of them realizing that maybe they've got to either work harder, or that you said before, get better or give up. And I think someone like yourself at the helm to teach them through that. I was going to ask about, the sort of aftercare of the contract situation, because that's the important bit, I would say, in your mind. Once the decisions are made, is what happens with the guys and girls that don't make it into the next round of obviously contracts and security, I suppose.
Yeah, most definitely. When I became a coach, I promised my dad that I'd be really honest and clear in my communication, because as a player, that wasn't always the case, and it kills you. Communication personally and publicly in our roles is so important. So Steve Waugh used to always say, you always praise publicly and criticise privately, and it's another great bit of advice. But honest communication, I believe that honest conversations can fix everything. But it takes courage to have honest conversations. As the Australian way, as I know it, to look someone in the eyes and tell them the truth. And the flip side is, if people give me feedback, which has happened a lot, then I've got to have the courage to take that on board as well, particularly if it comes from someone I trust and respect. So, and the other part of honesty is it's so important to be meticulously honest with yourself.
Yep.
The old man.
I was going to say that hard conversations are one thing for an easy life with other people, but that difficult conversation with yourself, as you were saying.
Absolutely. I mean, there's one thing, I talked about Theodore Roosevelt, man in the arena, but my gosh, the man in the mirror, you can't. I say I can lie to my wife, my kids, my mum and dad. I can lie to my mates, but I can't lie to myself.
There's no escaping that, and that's where the issues can arise, right?
Say it again.
I was going to say that's where the issues can arise, is when the biggest cheerleader and the biggest bully and the person that you can lie to the easiest is yourself, right? But it's also a tougher consequence.
Well, actually, that's so true, because the most important, you've got to be honest with is yourself. And look, you can't. We'll call it your conscience, call it whatever you like, but being honest with yourself is the best way to keep having freedom in your life. I think if you become delusional and you look for excuses and you look to point at other people or look to blame other people, you have no freedom there. If it's like poison. But if you're honest with yourself, that gives you some freedom.
And I love that segue, mate. It's like we're synced up in here. I think that freedom into vulnerability. So, the freedom that you do get from being vulnerable. Was that something that you took out of, I know that when we caught up for our media launch, you mentioned that, you'd gone to the premiere of the test and it was really tough because you didn't know how people would judge you, which obviously shows that you care. I think that's just the way you are. You want people to make sure that they respect you and maybe not necessarily like you all the time, but at least have that respect. What was it like watching that back, and what's the fallout been for yourself personally? Because, the players are always going to be the superstars of the time, aren't they? It's the way the world works.
I was nervous. I was nervous about the how it would be received, but the feedback's been overwhelmingly positive. The people can't believe that they were able to have that to be in the Australian cricket. They had no idea.
Incredible.
What it was really like. So it took great courage. I remember when I started at the West Australian cricket team, and we took on Alcohol Think Again as our main sponsor.
Yep.
And it'd be fair to say cricket's always had a bit of a tradition with alcohol, or certainly when I took over West Australian cricket, there was some issues around that. And our CEO, Christina Matthews, a terrific lady, she said,
lovely girl.
and I said to her, no, bring it on. Absolutely. We're going to walk the talk. I mean, leadership's walking the talk. If we're serious about it, why would we worry about that? If that's important, let's bring it on. And I think that's the same in everything in life. You've got to be able to walk the talk. And the point is that when I saw the documentary, I realised, I think we watched episode 7, I realised how much I love my job, even though most of the time I think I hate it. How much I love my players and how lucky I am to be involved in something that I love cricket. I've been watching cricket since I was 4 or 5 years old. It's in my blood. Australian cricket's in my blood, and now I get a chance to be one of the leaders in it. So yeah, I'm very fortunate.
I was going to say, I mean, I'm a huge cricket fan, as I've said to you avidly before, or vividly, or made it very well known that I grew up and you were one of my heroes on the park. Just being a shorter stature batsman, I think it was, copping it from all sorts of bowlers. But what was it that allowed you, or what was the attribute that you had that allowed you to transition from a player to a coach? Because not every person can do that, and there's a lot of AFL, NRL, every code, guys and girls who wouldn't be able to transition into a coaching role per se, but be really good at their craft on the field. What's the attribute or attributes that set that apart, do you reckon?
I think there's a couple of things. There's an old coach, Steve Rickson, who's a really very, very, very good coach, professional coach, and a tough, mate, tough.
Old school, I think they call it.
I first went over to coaching, and I'll never forget him saying to me, and I was never a great player, I was a good player, but he said, just because you're a great player doesn't mean you'll be a great coach. I went, okay, no worries. I also said, yeah, but just because I was a good player doesn't mean I can't be a good coach either. And I think some of the things, I'll never forget, one of the most important things about becoming a good coach, you've got to drop your ego.
Yeah.
drop your ego, because you're not just dealing with yourself anymore. You're dealing with, you've got to deal with lots and lots of people and big picture stuff. So I remember the first time I was a coach, I just finished playing. I just retired from Test cricket, and there was a game between like an all-stars team, the two teams who were that been voted to be the two best teams in Australian cricket. And there's a game at the Gabba. They asked me to be head coach of it, and I just finished playing. And I remember at the Gabba, and I'm walking down, and some of these kids had never played before, and they were all asking for their autograph, and not one person. I just played 100 tests, but not one kid asked me for my autograph. And it was like the first taste of, oh, okay. No ego. Drop your ego, pal. So I think to transition, you got to drop your ego. You've got to start thinking about bigger picture rather than just when you're a player, you think, I've got to concentrate on making runs next game, because if I do that, I'll get selected. And if I do that enough times, I'll get a contract. Whereas with coaching, you've always looked bigger, and you're looking after everyone else. And that's why you've got to be really disciplined to look after yourself. It's probably a tough lesson I've learned the last 10 years. But you've got to still have to look after yourself. Otherwise, you get worn out because you're looking after everyone else the whole time.
I was going to say, you have to fill up your own cup. That champagne tower analogy, right? You're filling up that top champagne. And I'm sure you've been to parties with champagne towers, mate, after an Ashes win here and there. But it's about filling up the other ones, right? But you're first, and I think that matters, especially as we go through these tougher times. I just had a quick one on, and it's a bit of a left field one, but the NRL players are obviously going into a bit of a hub situation. In particular, the New Zealand Warriors coming over and leaving their family for, I think it's about 5 months that they can't see their close friends and relatives for back home. You guys, and I've seen a lot of cricketers come out and actually, I think maybe Dean Jones and a couple of others have come out and said, toughen up. Basically, we did it back in the day. Let's go to the positive, because that's what we're about. What are the best bits of advice you can give someone who may be going through something like that?
Well, one, you'll survive, and you and your families will survive. It's actually it's the same with all the footy codes at the moment. They're talking about having to make some sacrifices. But actually, for the health of the game, it's important the players do make some sacrifices. Otherwise, the economic, financial ramifications are huge. So that's one thing. Remember the responsibility. Second thing is that you're not going to jail. You're not going to war. You're going with your mates. You're going to play footy, and it's so much fun. I've lived basically my whole adult life in a hub. We had 4.5 months in England last winter, and I saw my kids for 2 weeks. So you'll survive. I think the third thing is stay connected. And within the world we live in, the very fact that I'm sitting in my office and you're sitting in your office, and we're doing this now, there is no excuse for staying connected now. It's just an attitude. Connection is an attitude. So my family, I would speak to my family at the very least once a day on FaceTime while I'm away. At the very least one time. So therefore, when I come home after 4.5 months away, it's like I've never been away.
Yeah, it is. I don't know how you guys, I mean, obviously you did it with the old school phone line connected to a wall situation, but back in the day, it must have been real. Were you still writing letters back then, mate?
Yeah, we were actually, postcards. When my grandmother died, and my mum, just after my mum passed away, she had all the postcards I used to write my grandmother and my aunties. Yeah, so there was a stack this big of postcards. So it was postcards back then. But one thing I did, I'll never forget. I'm getting off tangent a bit, but when I was 16, I went to England for the first time with a schoolboys tour, and all the boys were older than me. But I went and I've got 100 at Lord's, and you imagine the thrill of that. But I don't remember one single thing about the innings. I remember nothing about the cricket. What I remember is at the end of it, I ran around to the red phone box, the London phone box in the middle of Lord's, and I rang my mum and dad reverse charge calls.
Of course,
My mum and dad's in the middle of the night. I've just got 100 at Lord's. And what I remember is how proud my mum and dad were of me.
That's awesome.
I was so proud of me. And that sits with me right now. To this day, as a 50-year-old, I still think what's going to make my mum and dad proud of me. And the other thing that happened, I vowed, I spoke to my mum and dad every single day I was away from that day on. So, and I said the same with my wife and kids. Back then it was expensive, but that was a sacrifice I had to make to stay connected. So connection's an attitude, stay connected. And the other things I talk about in footy is, we're going to play in front of no people. And I say to them, well, when you're a kid, remember you're playing junior footy or junior rugby or junior cricket, there's no one there. Your mum and dad were there. And your brother and sister are probably playing on the swings, bored about watching their brother play footy or cricket. But you did it for the great joy and love of the game, right? And there's a great lesson in that as well. Do it for the love of the game. You'll play better. You'll entertain more people because you're doing it for the really pure reasons. And just enjoy it, love it. You'll survive. The rugby boys, you'll survive. Footy boys,
I love that. I think it's obviously going to be tough because they're not used to it, and I think that's a conditioning thing, right? And as you said, it's an attitude. Everything that you choose or choose to do or not to do is an attitude. So and hopefully being in a hub together, they can find some common ground and maybe bond a bit more like you guys would have done on your away trips, I'm sure.
Well, actually, and it's so true. I talk about this very fondly. Is some of these guys like Ricky Ponting and Matthew Hayden, Adam Gilchrist, Damien Martin, Glenn McGrath, Steve the War brothers. They're like my brothers. They are literally like my brothers. And you talk about close mentors and close friendships at the start of this interview. They are like my brothers. I spent so much time. And actually what happens is if you do it properly, the camaraderie, it's like the glue that keeps everything together, particularly when you're under pressure on and off the field. So I'm thankful for that time living in hubs for 20 years because I got great friendships, great brotherhood from those times we spent on and off the road together.
And I think you can see that as you called upon them in the last couple of series and brought them over as the test showed. I think, Tugger, Steve Waugh's impact on the Ashes itself and Ricky Ponting's impact on the one days was huge because I'm sure the respect they had for you, and they mentioned that as well.
Yeah, well, it's one of the important things about leadership as well. I say that I used to have a quote in my office at the Wacker, and it used to say, I never went to Harvard, but I employed a lot of people who did. And one of the important things about leadership is getting great people around you. And a lot of leaders don't have the courage to do that because they feel threatened. But actually,
ego. Yep.
But actually, an ego is a big thing. They feel threatened. They feel insecure. But actually, that doesn't make sense to me. The more great people you can have around, it makes you look better anyway. Because
100%.
And guys like Ricky and Steve Waugh, Matthew Hayden, Mike Hussey's involved with the T20s with us now. Just brilliant people, and they're so important for the development of our leaders. It helps. You imagine being the opposition. They see Steve Waugh sitting on your balcony.
No, thanks.
It's smart management, and for me personally, it's really important personally because I've got some of my mentors and my friends around which help me.
Yeah, that's brilliant, mate. Hey, just a personal one quickly, very tangential. The wedding band that you guys have on during the test series. I've had actually quite a few mates text me knowing that I was in contact with yourself. What's the go there? Is one of them a banking one? Is that what's happening?
Is it a what?
I think they have those banking, you can put your card onto a ring now and just
No. This is actually plastic. Look, this is literally plastic.
Gotcha.
And they're great. You can get them, mate. They're really good. And this one here, funnily enough, I was in a place called Dominica in the West Indies. And it's just, again, this is plastic as well. And there's this big groundsman, big West Indian groundsman. He would have been about 140 kilos, right? But he was happy the whole time. He was smiling, laughing, happy. And I started to form a bit of a bond with him. And he had a plastic bangle on, or rubber bangle, and he had this rubber wedding ring. And I said, what's that? And he goes, I don't know, my wife gave it to me. He goes, I'll get you one. And he gave me this. And this one reminds me of being happy. It's just a reminder, be happy. Be happy.
Love it.
By the Dominican
groundskeeper.
So that's that. And these ones, I think they're called, I'm not sure. I've got no reason, but I think they're halo wedding rings. You can get them all different colours and they're plastic. So for us, when we're catching balls or training all the time, yeah, that's what all our guys, I think, a few of the boys wear them.
Yeah, that was my, I saw it early in the piece. I was like, it must be to do with not having to take it off every 10 seconds when you're smacking balls around.
Pretty much.
Mate, as always, you're incredibly generous with your time, and you can give people three things: time, talent, and money. In life, I think in helping people grow movements like ours, and you've given us so much of your time and your attention, and your talent, mate. So I really appreciate everything that you've given to us. We're indebted to you forever. But I just want to finish up by asking you why you decided to become a part of Happiness Co's initiative, Happiness Aid. And if you have any messages for those guys that'll be watching this in a live stream in a few days' time.
Well, one, I believe in what you're doing. I think it's so important. I've said, since I've been coaching, I've seen growing. I've seen more kids between the ages of 18 and young men, 18 and 36 coming. I've seen more of them cry than I could ever believe. And it's not because they're just, with different stresses, and they're vulnerable and they're opening up. So I've seen that. I've seen some really high profile examples in the last little bit of people with mental health issues. I've seen it with, friends and family who are close. So I believe in what you guys are doing. I love the mindfulness. I've been meditating since 1993. That was offered to me.
Before it was cool, Justin. Before it was cool.
Oh, well, actually, the strangest thing was when it was introduced to me, transcendental meditation, I really fell off my seat. I didn't know what he was talking about. I learned it, and I've been meditating pretty much every day since. It's a long time meditation, and also, I've learned about gratefulness in these tough times. Gratefulness, I start every day with 30 minutes meditation. I finish every night with my gratitude journal. It's just a brilliant way to. So I believe in what you guys are doing, and I honestly think there's going to be some silver linings through this tough times of COVID, and hopefully we can look after each other better. We can slow down the pace of life a bit. We can get back to the foundations and what's important. I've literally been loving seeing my family every day. I've been loving being in my garden. I've been loving being able to exercise and be healthy. I love being able to stay connected through these sort of forums. I think it'll change how we do a lot of things. There's going to be some great pressures coming up in the future. And in these times, we need these fundamental strategies to get us through, because it's not going to get easier for a while, no doubt about that, with economic ramifications. But, I believe in what you guys are doing. I respect what you're doing. I admire what you're doing. And it's a no-brainer for me to help where I can. Really appreciate that, mate. And that you'll be stoked to know that there's close to over 5,000 people in that private group now, sharing gratitudes every day pretty much. I think we had a look at the stats, and there's almost 1,000 people posting their gratitudes and doing those fundamental things every day. And a lot of them talk about, gratitude and being grateful for nature and meditation and mindfulness and breathing and everything that is the bedrock of what we talk about, which is the preemptive approach to mental health and well-being. So to have someone like yourself leading the charge and doing it before it was cool makes a big difference, I think, particularly, and I say this without any jest, I think particularly for blokes, because you were seen as a strong character, and it must be nice. I know you mentioned before seeing lads cry that maybe you hadn't been exposed to before, but that must be empowering to see that happening in this current environment. Well, it is, because it means you've built trust. And I think that I look at it like this. You have honest conversations, you build trust. And with trust, you can have more honest conversations. And with more honest conversations, you can build more trust. But the thing is about being an Aussie bloke, and trust me, I've lived through this big time. In my darkest times, I'm meant to be the tough guy, right? I've done boxing and martial arts and opened the batting, and I'm meant to be the tough guy. And I put on the mask all the time. It's one of the hardest things about it. I put the mask on all the time. But unless you're able to talk. I remember I got married. My dad said to me, "Son, I'll give you one bit of advice. Make sure you talk. When things are going well, talk. When things aren't going well, talk." And as Aussie blokes, we don't do it enough. And sometimes it's like spewing out cancer. Because it eats you alive. If you think, "No, I'll be fine. She'll be right, mate. I'll be fine." Okay, no worries. But that's not, to me, from personal experience and from what I see, that's not the best remedy. Being able to talk to people, being able to open up, being vulnerable, that's usually it's like medicine, actually. So Underneath this tough exterior, I've learned from bitter and really valuable experience as an Aussie bloke. If you can talk, if you can, then makes for a much happier life.
Sure does, mate. And I think they talk about sunlight being the best disinfectant, and getting it out into the open can always be a huge tool for making sure that when you do it once, you can do it again. And I think that's really important. So if things are building up, you can let go of them a bit earlier. And not having those masks. I think that's my biggest takeaway from today's chat, as well as other things, mate, is you would have had to wear a few masks in your time, and sometimes even now when you're in front of media and being pressured from all angles, it's probably easy to slip back into putting the mask on. But the other stuff that you are doing, I'm sure, would help alleviate all that pressure.
Yeah, my best advice for leadership is you've got to be yourself. If you try and be something else, you've got to, and you've got to be disciplined in areas. For example, I've got to be very disciplined what I say in the media now.
Of course.
I've learned that, but you've got to be disciplined. You've got to walk the talk, but you've got to be yourself. You get to positions because of yourself. As soon as you try and be someone different, it puts extra pressure on. Be yourself. Be real. Be real. Have a
Love
crack.
that, mate. Authenticity and taking the opportunity, making the decision. We had another gentleman doing a Q&A the other day in the name of Mark Urich, good friend of John Hughes, who I'm sure would know, and he was saying that John's best advice was making a decision is better than no decision, even if it's the wrong decision.
Absolutely.
Love that, mate. Thanks so much for letting us into your office there and giving us your time today. And this will be going up live into the group in a few days, and people will be able to, I'm sure, put some more questions up, and maybe we can get together again virtually and hang out once more.
Anytime. Peace out, everyone.